In the session, we're going to try to answer the question, are MOOCs coming of age? First, a little bit about me. I'm Steve. Hi. I've been a Mensa member since 2007, but what I do for my day job is I am an educational publishing professional. I have been for 30 years. Have worked for some of the major publishers and some smaller ones too. I've worked for Harcourt, for Holt Rinehart and Winston, for Wiley, for McDougall Littell, an internet startup, and I'm currently working for the IEEE. Do we have any IEEE members in the room? A couple? Everybody know what the IEEE is? We never spell it out, but it's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. There's about 400,000 members around the world in a variety of technical professions. And with the IEEE, and you probably know them best actually as a publisher of the standard for Wi-Fi. If you're able to connect to the Wi-Fi network here on site, it's because of the IEEE standard that everything complies with. But working with IEEE in the last year and a half or so, I've partnered with one of the major MOOC providers called edX, which was founded by MIT and Harvard to create MOOCs, which is massive open online courses for worldwide distribution. We launched 2 this week, so we're at about 14, 15 courses and more than 200,000 students in that amount of time. This is only my second AG, by the way. It is my first since joining Firehouse, and I was expecting it to be a little wilder than it was. I have totally failed to get in any trouble this year, so we just it's not over, that's true. I hear things about Sunday night. So what's a MOOC anyway? This chart has been floating around for a long time, but it emphasizes the fact that every letter in MOOC is disputed. And I know a Mensa audience enjoys disputing things, but the classic definition of the acronym is MOOC, Massive Open Online Course. But within that, there's a lot of room for definition of what exactly is massive. If you typically teach 10 students a year in a very niche kind of course, and you reach 100 with a MOOC, for you that's massive. For some courses, they do reach literally tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of students in doing it. So for them, obviously, that's massive. Open, well, most of the courses have open registration, which means you can sign up for free and take it without paying anything. But there's usually a charge for something somewhere down the line. But not everything is totally open either. Sometimes there are restrictions. Sometimes there's content that's for some people and not for other people. So again, disputed, and sometimes there is just a charge for taking the course, but they're still all considered MOOCs, even though they're not all open. Online, which would seem obvious, but a lot of MOOCs also have components that are live. We call those blended programs. You know, a lot of universities actually use MOOCs for delivering lecture content online, but just come to the classroom to do assignments, group projects, and discussions with your instructor and with your fellow students. So not everything is always online. And course, what exactly is a course? Some of these MOOCs are the traditional format of a university course. It's 14 weeks, it's 6 hours of work a week, it's reading and it's assignments and it's testing. Some of them are an hour long or 2 hours long. Is that a course? Well, it's up to your interpretation. Just a word about some of the major players in the market. There are, depending on how you define MOOC, I'm sticking with these 4 that I'm going to list here as the major players. As it happens, all 4 of them launched in 2012, and none of them existed before 2012. So just to put this in a little bit of a historical context. Probably the biggest and best known is Coursera, which has about 15 million students so far and about 2,000 courses. They are a for-profit company. They were started by 2 professors from Stanford University. edX, which, full disclosure, edX is the platform that I work with, so it's also the one that I know best. But edX was founded by MIT and Harvard and is a nonprofit consortium of various universities And they've also started accepting some private institutions, non-university partners. About 1,000 courses, and they're not-for-profit. And in fact, their platform is also open source. So if you wanted to offer courses out of your own institution or whatever, you could download the software, install it on your servers, and list it. FutureLearn is actually the only one of the ones I'm going to talk about that is not US based. It's out of the UK, and it grew out of the UK's Open University program. They're at about 3.9 million students and more than 200 courses. And another for-profit, which kind of straddles the line. I don't always consider this one even a MOOC provider, but Udacity, which has 1.6 million students and about 150 courses. They really focus on something they call nano degrees, which are bodies of knowledge around particular technical subjects, and so they're much more focused on professional education than a lot of the other platforms, which have a greater variety of content. In the description for this session, I mentioned the year of the MOOC, and it comes from this article from the New York Times on November of 2012. At this point, three of the four providers I mentioned had already launched. One would launch in December of that year. And I just wanted to share this one quote from here because it really encapsulates what the hope was initially and what may continue to be the hope for what MOOCs do in the future. The shimmery hope is that free courses can bring the best education in the world to the most remote corners of the planet, help people in their careers, and expand intellectual and personal networks. And that was just a little less than 4 years ago. So 4 years later, where are we? Well, where we are is 35 million courses have been enrolled in from those MOOC providers in that time. Now, I don't have figures on how many of those are repeats, how many people signed up for multiples, but there's obviously some. More than 4,000 courses are available online from more than 600 universities and a smaller number of non-university partners like the IEEE. Worldwide, for sure, 75% of students are from outside the United States, which is pretty remarkable. One thing that has been surprising about this is the education background of the students. More than 70% of them already have at least a bachelor's degree, which was surprising. It's not what was expected when they launched the program. And a growing number of universities at this time are starting to offer college credit for completing MOOCs, but it's still small and experimental. But MOOC market is dominated by elite, mainly American universities, but almost all English speaking. It's not the totality of things, but it's what's dominating this market, in part because of the costs involved in producing the courses. These high costs and low revenues will threaten sustainability in the long run unless it continues to be just dominated by these big universities like Stanford, like MIT, like Harvard. Critics of these kind of programs, they look at the low completion rates. You find that only about 7% of the people who sign up for a MOOC complete all the requirements for finishing it. And we'll talk later about why I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's part of the criticism for it. There's not, an accrediting body for MOOCs, so some are better than others, and sometimes they're considered what they have is not necessarily the soundest of pedagogy. And there's a large factor of what you call edutainment courses out there, and a lot of people consider that that's kind of dumbing down education. And we'll talk about the edutainment in a little while. So basically, with a few exceptions, rather than bringing education to the uneducated around the world, MOOCs are tending to bring education to the already educated, which is not a bad thing, but it's not part of the original mission. But we'll talk more about the places where it is hitting the mission in a little bit. But just going on with definitions a little bit. So what's a MOOC anyway? I know some of you have taken MOOCs, some of you haven't. They've been around arguably since 2008, maybe a little bit earlier. There were a number of large universities that started putting a lot of their curriculum for free on the internet, most notably MIT and Stanford, but others as well. as I say, in 2012, that's when the four big players kind of launched and went online. And not coincidentally, two of those four were founded by people from Stanford and MIT. In general, a MOOC features as its base material a video-based lecture. That is an instructor talking to the cameras, talking to students, augmented by non-video content, text content, assessments, assignments, that sort of thing, and really supported by discussion amongst peers in the course. As you can imagine, if you have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 students, there's not a lot of opportunity for one-on-one discussion with your professor. So a lot of that role is taken on by peers talking to peers. And so the discussion forums within a course are an essential part of most MOOCs. What's a MOOC not? Honey, it's been 15 minutes. I don't think he's going to call on you. MOOCs get a lot of criticism for not being things. They're not the same as a university course. They're not the same as this, where we can talk to one another and there's an active engagement and that sort of thing. They are a valuable tool. They augment education. They augment university education. They're not a replacement for it. I don't think that's a criticism. I think it's just a reality that we have to keep in mind as we look at what is the place of MOOCs in education going forward. And what do we mean by massive? I've already talked about this a little bit, but the biggest MOOC out there right now is one from Coursera called Learning How to Learn. And it's so far had 1.2 million students. Remarkable. At least 20 MOOCs out there have had more than 500,000 students each, and bunches that have had tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. But 500,000 students is, to put it in context, 5 times the largest attendance of any Super Bowl ever. And if you'd like to see what that looks like, that's what this looks like. That's 5 of them. That's not actually the Super Bowl, but you get the photos you can from the stock photo houses. And the numbers get a lot of focus from folks, because it's exciting. Of course, with 1.2 million students, that's a pretty remarkable number, and it's more than any university professor will ever face in their classrooms in their entire career. Right? When edX launched, their founder is MIT professor Anand Agarwal, who's an MIT professor in circuits and electronics. And he did a circuits and electronics course. It was basically his university course that he put online. The first time he ran it, he got 155,000 students from 160 countries take that. He's been teaching for 20 years. I haven't done the math, but he hasn't taught 155,000 students in that amount of time. So numbers are important, but is it all about numbers? And I would argue no, that it's not. The big enrollment courses, they tend to be the big subjects, the introduction to whatever subjects. Those are the ones that bring in the biggest numbers, as well as sort of the edutainment courses, like Learning How to Learn, which is very vibrant, active kind of thing. But in the end, a lot of the edutainment stuff are interesting and fun, and we all love to learn, and it's a great thing. But there's not a lot of practical value around those kind of courses. They don't advance your career, advance your education, or that sort of thing. It's self-fulfillment, which is great. But that's also why there's a growing desire for more specialized professional education, both in MOOCs and SPOCs. SPOCs. I'm going to throw a flag on myself. Unnecessary buzzwords. What is a SPOC? It is a small private online course. So these could be offered by a university or by an association or by a private trainer, where all or some of the content is delivered online, and some of it may be in a face-to-face kind of setting. So just explaining my buzzwords there. But the idea is not everything has to be a course that gets 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 students. You can serve the needs of smaller groups, more specialized groups, using a lot of the same techniques and the same platform. Which is why we have seen it's part of why we've seen a what I call a MOOC Illusion, or evolution of MOOCs over the years. Back in 2013, virtually every MOOC was essentially a university course pulled up and dropped online. So they were 13, 14 weeks long. They were 6 hours of work a week, and you know, you had to complete them in the same way everybody on campus did. That means that they were also instructor-paced, which means, like any university course, you would take week 1 of the course when everybody took week 1 of the course. You would not have access to the second week's information until the second week came around. And you'd take that, and everybody took it at the same time and went through it at whatever pace the instructor said, this is what you ought to cover in a week, or in a day sometimes, whatever. Most of the video lectures that were presented were done in a setting like this, with a camera in the back shooting the instructor at the front of the classroom, in front of a large classroom and a lot of students. And of course, because most of the courses were coming from, you know, actual universities and being shot in university classrooms, the curriculum itself was very based on the traditional university curriculum. And at the time, everything about a MOOC tended to be free. So you take it, you'd, you know, whatever services were part of it, you get a certificate at the end. There was no cost whatsoever. In the years that have passed, the few years that have passed, things have been changing a little bit. As I mentioned, again, 75% of students already have a degree, which means most of them already have a job, which means most of them can't spend 6 or 8 hours a week for 14 weeks in a row to take a course. So you've seen the courses get shorter, both in terms of the number of weeks, as well as the amount of work per week. So you'll see a typical course is now 4 to 6 weeks and maybe 3 hours of work per week going forward. Rather than dictating to the student that this week you're taking this content and next week you're taking that content, and so it's become much more common to be student-paced. So the day the course launches, say the course launches on April 1st and is expected to last for 6 weeks. On April 1st, if you want to take the content that goes all the way through June, or however long 8 weeks is, it's up to you. You put, you know, because you're finding these are students from all over the world, every time zone, 190 countries plus. They decide when they're going to take the content, when they're going to do this. Some of them will do some here, not come back for 3 weeks, you know, that sort of thing. Some of them will finish it in 2 days. The video lectures have tended to be much shorter, and we'll get into a little research on why that is, but 6 to 8 minutes for an individual video, and also much more informal. Not somebody standing at a lectern talking to a room, but somebody maybe sitting at a desk talking to an audience of one, the camera. So it becomes almost like one-on-one instruction. An instructor talking to one person who just happens to be on the other side of the camera or on the other side of a computer. And a much greater focus on professional development courses, things that will help you in your career, which is just logical. That's the audience they were already reaching, is the people who already had a career. And stuff is starting to be less and less free and using what we call a freemium model. So you may have free access to the course, so you can take all the lectures, you can do all the assignments, but if you want a certificate at the end, you have to pay for that certificate. And so they're also looking for ways for how to enhance the value of that certificate. Some of it is because of the names of the organizations that are on the certificate. Some of it is you can embed the certificate in your LinkedIn profile, and job providers can see that you've done this course of study, that sort of thing. And also looking for what other things they can sell you as part of this. And we'll talk about that more when we get into the business models. Any statistics lovers in the house? Proviso, this is specifically stats around IEEE courses. So, you know, your mileage may vary. More than anything, we tend to skew more male at IEEE than a lot of folks. That said, MOOCs do skew a little bit male, probably about 60% to 40%. You know, 60% men, 40% women taking MOOCs. In the case of IEEE courses, it's more like 80-20, but that's an engineering problem, or a problem with engineering. And you can see the age. We're really talking about you know, core audience in the 28 to 40 range. So not university students, not pre-university students, although certainly you get them as well. And then you can see there what the education level is. 75% have a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate. Now, still a significant number that don't, but we're underserving that audience right now, and there's a lot of potential there. So that's a hope for the future, that we're going to do better at reaching the younger students before they get to university. I share this just to show a little bit of the importance and why IEEE decided to get into this business. This data is a little bit old already, but this is from a survey we did in May of 2014. And I'll remind you, historically, in May of 2014, only, I think, 2 of the 4 major MOOC providers even had existed for 2 years, and the others were less than 2 years. So we asked our membership, and specifically our membership in industry, not our university professor membership. We asked them, who is the leader in continuing professional education in your field, which is an important one as well. And you can see almost 10% of them named edX or Coursera, which is pretty darn remarkable. I'll say, again, we have not refreshed this data yet, but in general, MOOC participation doubled in 2015 over 2014. So I'm sure these numbers are higher now. We also asked them at the time what was the source of their most recent continuing professional education. We actually asked them name any place that you have taken continuing education from in the past 3 years. And now remind you that neither edX nor Coursera had existed 3 years before we asked the question, but we still had 16% of our membership say that was the last place they took continuing professional education. So it's certainly clearly becoming relevant to our audience. I did my animations late. Now, what's it cost to do? And everybody you ask will sort of say it depends. And I'm going to use a phrase here that I use in almost every time I talk about the subject of MOOCs. There are no experts in MOOCs. There just aren't. It's all too new. It's changing too quickly. We are learning more about what a MOOC is and should be every day. One of the things we're trying to come to grips with is what it costs to do. Now, the actual cost of being on a MOOC platform varies by the platform and by the partner, because those get individually negotiated. But there's generally a cost to be part of one of these MOOC providers. For an individual course, I have seen courses from large, well-funded universities that cost $150,000 or $250,000 to create. You look at courses created by Columbia University, who describe the reason they're doing MOOCs. They say that they're capturing iconic instructors for the ages. And the videos that they do in their courses look like they were shot by Martin Scorsese. And they spend a lot of money on those courses. IEEE is not that. We have created a number of courses for less than $5,000, including a course that we did, Introduction to Cloud Computing, that I spent about $2,000 to create, and so far we've had about 90,000 students take that course. So big money does not necessarily translate always into relevance or into a substantial number of students, and therefore, expensive is not always better. And there's data to back that up too. This is from a study done last year looking at how video production affects student engagement. I won't read all of that for you. It's a little bit of an eye chart, but it actually justifies what a lot of us in the industry have thought intuitively all along. That you guys look at instructional videos and things like that. Have you ever sat for an hour at your computer and watched a video without stopping the whole thing? Nobody does, or very few people do. Shorter videos, 6 to 8 minute videos, which is a little scary to contemplate. Now, I say 6 to 8 minute videos. That doesn't mean that's all the video there is. You find the data show that you'll keep most of your students up to 8 minutes. At 8 minutes, most of the people who started watching your video are still watching. At 9 minutes, you lose half of the students who were still with you at 8 minutes. At 10 minutes, you lose half the students who were still with you at 9 minutes. And it doesn't matter If you keep it 6 to 8 minutes, even if you go from one video to another video, you keep the students. But if you make a 12-minute video, you've lost most of your audience. Just human nature. You get into that passive watching mode, and you just kind of drift off. And the other thing I'll point out about this chart is that really what it comes down to, what keeps students coming back to the course, is not high production value, it's not fancy music, it's not fancy editing, it's not a lot of graphics, it's the instructor. It's an engaging, interesting instructor who has a passion for the content that he or she is talking about and conveys that to the student. And that's it. Everything else is window dressing. And so what's really recommended is low cost, simple, videos shot at the professor's desk, and one of the things that we're doing at IEEE is we're trying to also empower the instructor to do this themselves. We have something we call the studio in a box. And it's just a simple video camera, a high definition microphone, because that's more important than video quality, is the audio quality. Because you might know yourself, you'll forgive looking at a video if it's a little grainy, it's a little shaky, the color's a little bit wrong, but if the sound is buzzy or unpleasant, that'll drive you away more quickly than possible. So like, you can capture pretty good video just out of your iPhone. The audio's not so hot. And so you need a little bit something better than that. So it's really, the other thing that, an instructor will try to, have an accent, or I can't talk, I don't want to talk too fast, people won't understand me. The thing is, if you stand and you talk like this to people where everybody can understand every single word that you say, nobody cares to listen to you because you fall asleep. It is the enthusiasm, the exuberance, the passion that a live instructor brings to the material that keeps the students coming back and that engages the students and keeps them going. So that's really, and the worst thing in the world is a video of me standing here at this lectern talking to you in a class, in a big hollow sound and that sort of, nobody watches that kind of stuff. So the good news and bad news about this, the good news is that doing this kind of thing is not expensive. The bad news is it puts a lot of onus on the instructor to be good at instructing. To be able to plan out a lesson that is done in 6 or 8 minute increments. That takes work, that takes pre-thought. To be able to be engaging in those short segments and then pick up the thread and keep going on the next video. It puts a lot of the emphasis on the instructor rather than the bells and whistles that a lot of these videos have. But I think it's exciting, and it's also, it opens up this avenue to more people. It doesn't have to be just the universities that can throw $250,000 at a course to do this. It's very democratizing. If you're good at this, you can do this. So I wanted to share 3 video examples, just to show you what I'm talking about. This first one is what I consider a high production value video. This is from a Harvard X course on China, and it's actually part of a series of courses. I think they have 6 or 8 courses on China. I'm just going to let it run. Each video is about a minute long. I'm going to let it run for a second, and then we'll talk about what makes it expensive.
Welcome to China X, the online drama of China's engagement with the modern world. I'm Christopher Lydon, multimedia journalist and longtime China watcher from afar, pressing my nose into the frame of an unimaginable transformation, which is ongoing. But this new China, this soon-to-be largest economy among the nations, is not a 25 or 30-year story. Let's think of it as 2 centuries, 1820 to 2020. In which China as a civilization faced a danger without precedent, without much preparation either, and survived. But it was challenged, willy-nilly, to reinvent itself more than once. 200 years in China encompassed the collapse of the last empire, the Qing, and the founding of 2, 3, maybe 5 new Chinas in the ruins, through several cultural revolutions too, and not just the one you've heard about. It's a range of tests of what it means to be Chinese tests of the root wisdom of Confucian tradition, tests of family as the foundation of all human bonds.
That's pretty cool. What makes it expensive?
Location shots.
Location shots, correct.
Other sources. Editing.
Lots of editing. Multiple cameras. Images, which, unless they actually own the rights to those images, you got to pay for every image you put in, and they're doing one every 3 or 4 seconds, and they have to plan that out. Okay, when I say this is the image that comes up. Really expensive. I couldn't tell you how expensive that is, but it's a nice experience, isn't it? I mean, it's enjoyable to watch. If you take away all the images, or half the images, and you take away the music, which they're also paying for, do you learn less? Not necessarily. It's maybe a little bit more engaging this way, but is it better education? So next I want to look at, if you recognize that handsome devil, he was unable to grow a beard at the time. But this is a sample, this is an internal video we did for people creating MOOCs. And so this is an example of do-it-yourself with just a camera and a tablet for marking up slides as you go along. And again, this is just a minute.
Recommend you ask them for a few minutes of their time to talk about their experiences and how they were able to put together a MOOC. It's learning from other people is a very valuable tool. Teaching a MOOC is not the same as teaching a regular course, and I will emphasize that here. Teaching a MOOC is not the same as teaching a regular course. And we'll talk about some best practices and recommendations later, but take it as a given that each lecture is intended to be modularized, 7 to 9 minutes maximum. So planning lessons is essential. How do you boil down the topics that you're talking about into 7-minute segments? It's not always easy, and it takes a lot of planning up front. As the name implies, MOOCs are massive. You may have 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 students taking the MOOC that you create. So obviously you can't give individual students a lot of direct attention.
Okay. So not as flashy, not as exciting as the Harvard video, but it is very clearly what the data show engages students, which is a few seconds of the person talking, a few seconds of what they're talking about, including circling stuff, creating a sense of motion even when you're looking at the static page. It's not fancy. I mean, I did that on actually this iPad over here with a stylus, and you marry the two video streams. And the audio in that was not how it ought to be, but I was using I shot the video with a digital SLR that didn't accept an external microphone. The audio was okay, but it's not the standard that I would want to do in a real course. This next one that I want to show. So this one is from, I mentioned before, Learning How to Learn. Coursera course that has had 1.2 million students so far. And it is, again, do-it-yourself, but way better than my do-it-yourself. This is Barbara Oakley from, she's now at, I think, Oakland University. She used to be here at UC San Diego, and of course it's sponsored by UC San Diego. She has a studio set up in her basement, green screen, it's well lighted, and you'll notice you watch this video, but the most important thing in this video is Barb herself. It's not all the bells and whistles around it, because there are not a lot.
If you look at that guy right there, he was Salvador Dali, a very well-known surrealist painter of the 20th century. He was the very definition of a wild and crazy guy. You can see him here with his pet ocelot, Babu. Dali used to have an interesting technique to help him come up with his fantastically creative surrealist paintings. He'd relax in a chair and let his mind go free, often still vaguely thinking about what he had previously been focusing on. He'd have a key in his hand, dangling it just above the floor, and as he would slip into his dreams, falling asleep, the key would fall from his hand and the clatter would wake him up, just in time so he could gather up those diffuse mode connections and ideas in his mind, and off he'd go back into the focus mode, bringing with him the new connections he'd made while in the diffuse mode.
Isn't that great? Yeah. And really simple. But it's all about her ability. Both her ability to deliver the discussion, but also her ability with the technology. It's not complicated technology, but to do a green screen shot well is not simple, particularly around the lighting. There were not a lot of jump cuts, there were not a lot of edits, there wasn't music, this is not at all expensive to do, but it's not easy to do. And it boils down to how good the instructor is. And as I said, this is currently the most popular MOOC in the world. 1.2 million people have signed up for this MOOC. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. It's learning how to learn from Coursera, and it's listed. I have references in the slides as well, and you'll be able to download the slides too. So it's listed on there. So going on, how does this stuff get paid for? Right now, it doesn't really. There are a few ways that they're trying to make you pay. The most obvious and the thing that's had the most success so far is through paid certificates. So access to the course material is free, typically, but if you want a certificate at the end, you have to pay for that. It's usually not a big fee, $50, $100 in that range. And we find kind of predictably 1% to 2% of the students who register for the course will pay for it. That also includes, I know edX lets you also donate to the course, which is nice. So recognizing that this stuff takes money to create, you can actually just give money, whether you want the certificate or not. There are also certificates for completing a course of study, and most of the major MOOC providers have implemented this in the last couple of years. Like edX was the first with what they call X series. So you take 5 related courses, and you get a certificate that says you completed all of them, but you pay for the certificate. Or they're also launching something they're calling a micro masters, and something they're calling a professional diploma. The micro masters is actually interesting. The first one is from MIT X, so you can actually complete. I'm not sure the particular subject area, but you can complete the first half of an MIT master's degree through edX. And you get a certificate that's called a MicroMasters. To complete the master's, you have to go to MIT and complete online and pay whatever everybody else pays for half a master's. But that's, yeah. And I mentioned already, Coursera calls what's basically the next series, they call it specializations, so a series of courses that you do. And Udemy has nano degrees. There's growing experimentation, maybe growing, on paid courses that you just, for $150, $200, whatever, you pay for a course and you take it. So far, there's not been a lot of success around that. A course that can actually do financially better offered for free with a paid certificate than charging for the course. You get that order of magnitude more students for that. But it's still, they're still playing it, they're still trying to figure it out. And it means for a paid course, they're really looking for, deciding that there really has to be a much greater value add than a free course with a certificate. So what makes it worth it to pay for the course? A newer model that has not been used a lot so far is sponsored content. So you go to a corporate sponsor, we're doing a course on X, and it's in your wheelhouse. Do you want to pay us to do that? And we'll put your branding on the course. Lead generation and public awareness. Obviously, if you have more than 1 million people taking your course, there's some value to the information from those people, that they're interested in this, and maybe they're going to be interested in this. So you reach out to them. So it's a common model on the internet. We'll give you something for free. You give us you, and that's how we pay for it. And I think the public imperative is not going away, particularly from the large universities who will do courses because they want to, because they want to do something that's going to be cool and it's going to be used and it's maybe going to make things better for people. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But I should stress that right now, including the for-profit companies, as far as I know, nobody's really making money at this yet. Not enough to support it. It's still a money pit. And it's something I personally have to justify to my volunteers, because we're a volunteer-led organization actually as well, and I have to justify to my bosses, we're going to be breaking. We're not allowed to just keep pouring money down here. So we're looking for how are we going to find a sustainable model that will help make MOOCs work in the long term. And if we can't do that, then we can't stay in the business. Now, I wanted to stress a couple of why people take MOOCs and who's benefiting from them. This is actually from a survey that was done of Coursera students for Harvard Business Review. And so they asked folks why you take the MOOCs and what you get out of them. So this is just those students who said that the primary reason they took a MOOC is they wanted career benefits. And these are folks, how they reported what benefits they got. 26% of the people who took it for a career benefit got a new job, which is, right? 9% started their own business, 6% either got a pay increase or a promotion. And those are the tangible benefits. On the intangible, I wanted to enhance the skills for my job. So, and pretty much anytime you take a course that teaches you something else in your field, you're going to do that. So that's 62%. So you see that there really are some career benefits to doing this kind of stuff. The other side is the educational benefits. And so these are the data from people who said the reason they were taking it was for their educational benefit. And a big number there is 12% who wanted to complete the prerequisites for an academic program. But growing, you see, that's still little. But 8% gain credit toward academic degrees, which I mentioned is a growing thing. So far, there's not a lot of universities that are accepting MOOCs for college credit. A big example of that on edX, Arizona State is putting a lot of their freshman curriculum online on edX and giving people who complete that, you can enter ASU as a sophomore if you complete that content. So obviously universities are a little bit nervous about offering academic credit for MOOCs, in part because they don't want to be in competition with themselves. So they're moving carefully in that range. And then the intangible benefits are all the ones you might expect. They gain knowledge, they got key concepts, improved admissions application, which is pretty cool. Coursera doesn't mention it here, but I know that edX has started offering a lot of advanced placement preparation courses online. Like I said, you're only about 16-17% of their students are pre-university, but they're really starting to reach out to them. And so you can do an advanced placement course online and then take the test for academic credit that way. But who's getting the benefits? Interestingly, and maybe intuitively it makes sense, the people who are benefiting the most from this, even though they're not the people who are taking it the most likely to report the benefits, are those who have lower socioeconomic status or are from non-developed countries. So those folks get more benefit from taking these courses than obviously somebody with a PhD in working in San Diego. So again, they're not the majority of the audience, but they are much more likely to report the benefits, tangible benefits of completing MOOCs than those who are in better condition to begin with, which makes sense, but is also gratifying. And on the subject of benefits, I wanted to mention this group, LaunchCode, which is a nonprofit that was started out of St. Louis, but has a number of satellite offices now. But they started off, their core business was, their founder was a tech professional in St. Louis who knew a lot of other tech professionals in St. Louis. And if you know anything about St. Louis, it has had some pretty crushing poverty in certain communities with folks who just couldn't get out. And he had this idea that he looked at edX's or Harvard X's CS50X course, which is Intro to Computer Science. And this is Harvard's Intro to Computer Science course that they took from the Harvard curriculum and put online. And they made no compromises about the level. They made no compromises about the testing. So he had this idea, I'm going to go to my friends in the tech industry here in St. Louis, and I'm going to tell them, if I can get a student to pass that course, and they have no other programming experience, you will hire them. And everybody he talked to said, yeah, we'll do that. He's placed more than 1,000 students this way. Folks who came to him with no programming experience at all. Now, he does a little bit different. He teaches sort of, they use a blended version of the course, so they'll get together and watch videos together, and there'll be a local tech expert to help them and that sort of thing. And he's placed more than 1,000 people in jobs just on the basis of completing that course. Now, it's a paid internship, but he sees 90% of the students who get a paid internship get the job. So that's pretty remarkable. Now they've expanded, they're doing other things as well, but that's a pretty remarkable story. I had the opportunity to go listen to him speak at an edX Global Forum last year, so that was exciting. Now, those students that we were talking about, maybe they wouldn't necessarily do well in that course if they just did it on their own. So they're getting a little help, but they're motivated. They want to raise their status. They want to have a paid job. And by the way, they're averaging, the job they're going into averages twice the pay of the job they're coming out of, right? So MOOCs as a tool for raising education levels and raising living levels, I think there's a lot of potential there. It's still in the early stages. And that's why, we come to this stage. I asked at the beginning, are MOOCs coming of age? And I have a very definitive answer. Sort of. Right? That picture is my daughter, Hope, who graduated from high school a week and a half ago. And I liken where MOOCs are now to where Hope is now. Right? Hope has figured out, here are some things that I'm good at. Here are some things I'm not so good at. Here are some things I love. Let me figure out, where do I go from here, right? How do I develop? How do I become everything I'm supposed to be? That's where MOOCs are now. They don't have the answers yet. And I think we'll probably find that different sort of MOOC providers will go in different directions and do a little bit different things. But I think in the end, it's pretty intuitive that they'll do several things. A grown-up MOOC. I think you're going to see more and more MOOCs that are offered for credit, that you'll be able to earn at least part of your degree online through this kind of program. And you're going to see more and more universities who are using MOOCs with their traditional students. So taking part of their requirements online and coming into class for other parts. It's hard, because I should mention, if you go, UC San Diego, for instance, which I actually has done some, I think it's UC San Diego, has done some experiments along these lines. And you're sitting in a classroom, and maybe, I don't know what the demographics are there, but maybe 60% of your classmates are from within a 50-mile radius of where you're sitting. In a MOOC, you're in a classroom with people from 190 countries. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of that perspective, that getting outside yourself and being part of something bigger than yourself. So I think you're going to see a lot more MOOCs for credit and a lot more MOOCs used in a blended program, where some of the work will be done online and some of it will be done in a more traditional classroom. University prep. This country, other countries, was struggling with pre-university education. And the fact that the quality of the education you receive varies depending on the quality of the school you attend. MOOCs can be a level in that way. With I hope, or without I hope, a sameness as well, because and I think that's the danger of the market being dominated by a few big players. That here is your course on algebra. And everybody learns algebra exactly the same way that it's. I'm not an advocate for a lack of variety. I am an advocate for a lack of variety and quality. It should all be good. So this can be a pretty good level. Continuing professional education. This is most likely to be the economic engine that drives the rest of it. People in the professions have money to spend on education and have the ability to do it. So you see already a lot of these platforms are serving the continuing professional education student more. I think that's going to be the trend, and they're going to try to pull more money out of that market. And that just makes sense. I mean, it's the reality of things. You got to pay for stuff. And then the last one, which is also another area for making money, is edutainment and learning for fun. We're Mensans, we learn for fun, right? And so I encourage all of you, as you find, sign up for as many MOOCs as you want. Pay for the ones that you really like, that you get value from. It's a voluntary kind of thing, but this stuff has to be supported some way. And if those of us who love learning and love education don't support it, who will? Right? So that is, I don't know how I am on time. I think I'm okay on time. But that's the last of my formal presentation. As I said, I'll take any questions now, but I will also put up, if you want to download the slides, I've got a bit.ly URL here and a QR code if you want it. There's also references in the slides if you want to follow up. But as far as that goes, do we have that? I thank you for your attention, but do we have any questions in the back there? That's part of it, and that's changing. Obviously, internet is getting better everywhere, but I think part of the problem also was, or has been, that a Harvard Intro to Computer Science course is tough, right? And so if you are undereducated to begin with, that's maybe not where you start. That there has to be more content that reaches out to folks who don't already have a college degree or don't have the prep to be able to do that kind of thing. And particularly, like in a country like India, which, by the way, India is the second biggest country in this platform. Some of my courses get 25% of its participation from India. But in India, the motivation is almost always economic. If I take this, will I get a better job? And so the content, if you want to draw people in like that, the content has to reflect that. Yeah, I agree with you, but universities by their nature are conservative about this kind of thing, and I think we will get there. We're just not there yet. It takes them a while to kind of say, they got to put their toe in and say, so right now they're using it for building their brand. I think eventually they're going to start using it for building their student body. Yeah, the question is, are there a lot of subject areas that require enough hands-on application that they're not really well suited for MOOCs? And yeah, that's absolutely true. In a lot of computer science applications, as you say, or electronics and that sort of thing, they do a lot of online simulations around those things. But in chemistry, for instance, mixing one chemical with another, you can't just give them instructions and send them off to do it. So theory tends to happen online much better than practice, and that's why as I said, there are a lot of universities that are playing with doing the lecture stuff online, but you come in to do the lab, or people are setting up even meetups to kind of create labs. Meetup is a web service. You can form a group around anything. So for instance, the nonprofit in St. Louis is bringing people together to practice, but they're doing all the lectures and stuff online. So yeah, it definitely has to evolve to a place where there's more ability to do the hands-on stuff, and that's not where they are right now. Yeah, it's very analogous, and in fact, again, if you've got 50,000 students in a class, there's not a lot of one-on-one with the professor. However, there are some ways to mitigate that. One way is, in the online forums, there will be teaching assistants who are part of it. There are the instructor himself or herself will be part of it as well. Students can vote up questions, like these are the questions, and I want this question answered too, I want this question answered too. And the stuff that rises to the top gets more of the instructor's attention. For some courses, the instructor will actually record a weekly video. So here's the questions I've seen coming up, and also to be able to look, looking at week to week what happens in the assessments, what questions are being answered incorrectly. That's what you can get that in real time and respond to that by being able to go and say, okay, everybody's getting question 4 in the quiz wrong. I need to do a little bit more instruction on that. So just using like a webcam or something like that, doing a brief discussion, kind of a revisit of the topic, or doing it through the forums and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, they're adjusting to this platform and sort of teaching at scale. And everything's got to be about teaching at scale on this. So the question is, in terms of business plan, to see any moving to this platform or these platforms from corporate learning. I would say for smaller organizations, probably yes. The big companies, your Boeings, they already have an in-house learning management system. They have proprietary courses. They're on there, and they may want to augment elsewhere. That's why, like at IEEE. We're a publisher, we're the 3rd largest publisher of scientific and technical data in the world. And virtually every technical university in the world subscribes to our online database of content. And most technical companies, although we don't have it, our plan on our MOOCs, and we already do some professional education out in that same platform, what we call IEEE Explore. We want to move to a place where our MOOCs are either cataloged there or delivered there, and the ability to do some custom courses in that platform for corporate customers. That will be, it's an easier market on smaller companies that don't have the wherewithal to create their own training groups and stuff. But yeah, I think there's going to be more and more in that area. Right now, the professional education market through these platforms is all individual. I mean, there are other platforms like lynda.com and that sort of thing. They're more specifically designed for professional education that offer subscription models, but that's not in the MOOC market yet. So the question is, in terms of meetups and other ways of facilitating local meetings around courses, do I see that being incorporated within the platform, Coursera or edX platform? And the answer is yes, absolutely. In part because, like on the edX platform, you have the ability when you build a course to have to build some custom tabs in there with custom content that's outside the platform. That includes the possibility of linking out to CS50 meetups around the country, a listing of all of those. And I see, particularly for the larger courses that have a large body of students worldwide who may want to meet up and discuss stuff, that just can be part and parcel of the course itself. They don't have to take it on and replicate the functionality. They just have to make it easy to access and use that functionality. And I think they're making some strides in that direction now. Yeah, I mean, I think this is an evolution of a lot of distance education and other education that's come before. Everything, from the great courses that I think is a sponsor of this conference. Everybody's trying to do it a little bit better and cheaper and easier and more accessible. And this is kind of the next step. I thank you all for your attention. I thank you for sticking around to the very end. Safe travels home. Thank you.